If there is a watch or warning of a hurricane anywhere in the state of Florida, then your deductible will be that hurricane deductible. So even if the damage is done while it's a tropical storm, then becomes a hurricane, unfortunately, the hurricane deductible applies. That's how the state has put it in their statutes.
Hi, I'm Brian Best with Exit King Realty, Sun and Sand Living. And our passion is to give you guys as much information as you can on your real estate journey, whether you're buying or selling, whether you're just looking for great places in Sarasota. We want to be your one-stop shop for everything real estate and be your local experts.
That's right. And I'm Philip Zoller. I'm a mortgage loan originator with Nexa Mortgage. Like Brian was saying, our goal is to be your ultimate one-stop shop for everything real estate in Sarasota. So do us a favor, hit the subscribe button, click the bell icon so you're notified anytime a new video is released, and your likes and your comments and subscriptions boost our visibility so that more people like you can discover our channel.
That's right. And you know what? Today we're thrilled to be talking with Martin Vreeman from Great Florida Insurance. You guys know we just had a storm recently, but we get a lot of questions when buyers go into a contract and they need to get that mortgage or they need to get that insurance quote. What do they need to provide? So
when someone is purchasing a new home and they need to get insurance, what documents do they need to provide to you?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the answer kind of depends on the property, but typically the reports that we look for on the insurance side are a wind mitigation inspection. This is the report that's done to show what credits the particular home you're looking to purchase have with regards to wind mitigation. In other words, are there hurricane straps? Are there shutters? How old's the roof? Other questions like that. The shape of the roof matters. If it's a hip or a gable, those are all different pieces that insurance companies look at in order to rate the premium. Okay, so that's called a wind mitigation report. Now, some of the newer homes, typically built in 2002 and newer, don't necessarily need those because Florida Building Code stipulated those particular credits be automatically applied. But even so, if you have shutters, those are not automatic because every home has some do, some don't. Although the newer codes from the last 5-6 years now stipulate that too. So the older the home, the more reports you're going to have typically to provide these evidences of mitigation credits. The other one is called a 4-point inspection. Now, not to be confused with a full home inspection. Insurance companies don't want a 50-page report. They like the short 4-point summary. And so whenever a home inspection is done, you definitely want to ask for a 4-point separately, because all that does by virtue of its name is look at 4 points of the home: your roof, your electric, your plumbing, and air conditioning. Those are the 4 major systems in the home that the insurance company is concerned about. They want to make sure they're all in good working order. They want to know how many updates were done. Again, updates can mean premium credit, so it's important to have those done. Besides those 2 reports, other things they may come into play are evidence of updates. We can look up a permit for most homes, but every so often, if a homeowner previously did their own roof, because Florida allows that, there may not be a permit there, so we might need evidence of a new roof. And some companies are picky where they don't just accept an inspector's idea of when it was done. They want something more. So updates are always very beneficial, the inspection reports. And then lastly, I would say sometimes the current owner's flood insurance, if necessary. If flood insurance is a necessity because of the zone, and of course, in light of the recent storms, that can be helpful as well, because there may be a grandfathering that the new buyer could experience lower rates by maintaining the existing flood policy instead of being out, purchasing his own.
So I heard you mention that you don't want the 50-page report. If you got that and they didn't have a 4-point inspection, what kind of problems could arise from that?
So insurance companies, yes, they want the truth. They want to know what's going on with the property, but we do not want to know if an outlet cover is missing or if there's some caulk missing on the tub. But the problem is, once you show your hand, the insurance company may come back and go, oh, by the way, you've got these things missing. We need you to fix that. Whereas the 4-point really looks more at insurability. the full report is more of a pride of ownership, right? All the little bits and pieces. So yeah, so we really do. As an agent, we're going to tell you, I don't want that report. I don't want to see what might be little things that you're going to just cosmetically fix. Give us the lowdown on the main points.
That makes a lot of sense. So can you speak into how the replacement cost of a property is determined?
That comes up a lot because of the market values going up and down. The insurance company looks at the value to replace the home, the dwelling, the specific building, not not the landscaping, not the acreage, not anything that's superfluous to it. They look for just the building. So insurance companies all have a third-party rating system. In our quoting system, we go in and we click a button and everything comes up, square feet, location, all that. And we can manipulate that. Is it a metal roof? Is it a shingle roof? How old is that roof? Is there a pool? Is it a cage? So we add all those pieces in together, and basically the system will spit out a value. This is what we believe the replacement cost is. We get some pushback sometimes because it may vary quite a bit. If the market is buyer friendly, for instance, they may buy a house for $300,000, and yet I'm looking to insure the home for $400,000. Well, that doesn't make sense. However, the insurance company does believe that that's the replacement cost, because cost to replace rebuilds typically a little higher than brand new cost, right? You've got debris removal, you've got a lot of things that work together for that. So that's where the replacement cost valuation comes in. Insurance companies have third parties already in place. We use those, and then we can manipulate a little bit, but we want to stay within that.
Gotcha. So a lot of times there's a lot of emphasis put on deductible and premium. So can you explain, how does the deductible affect my premium?
Sure. It does. I would say probably not significantly. Where the significant savings would be in the major differences, such as a hurricane deductible. In Florida, there are two deductibles typically. There's a non-hurricane deductible, also called all other perils, or AOP. You'll see that initials AOP, and that would be fire, theft, vandalism, water damage, separate from any kind of windstorm. Okay. And then there's windstorm would be included in that. A hurricane is what separates it. So it could be a tornado, could be a tropical storm, that would fall under the all other perils. Hurricane is specifically a hurricane event. And to clarify, they use the NAOC, NAOC. National, yeah, all right, that entity that determines whether there's watches or warnings. Like in this storm that we just had, Debbie, that just came through, if there is a watch or warning of a hurricane anywhere in the state of Florida, then your deductible will be that hurricane deductible. So even if the damage is done while it's a tropical storm, then becomes a hurricane, unfortunately, the hurricane deductible applies. That's how the state has put it in their statutes. Okay, so I've had a few calls on that this week where, because typically the hurricane deductible is quite a bit higher. As a matter of fact, it's a percentage usually of the dwelling value. If you have a $300,000 house and you have a 2% hurricane deductible, that means you have a $6,000 hurricane deductible. Okay, that's pretty hefty. Whereas the typical non-hurricane or AOP deductible is $1,000, maybe $2,500, right? Some even go to $5,000 now because the savings are there. But the savings are not significant until you really ramp up the hurricane deductible. And the hurricane deductible would be 2%, 5%, it can even be 10%. Well, now you're looking at a $30,000 deductible. I mean, that's a whole new roof, and then some. So to get this, we play around with that. When somebody calls us for a quote, we look at different variations, including deductibles, what they're comfortable with. And it may save a few $100 here and there. That's kind of what you're looking at.
Our viewers out there, we'd like to know, what is one thing that you guys consider a must-have when it comes to your homeowner's insurance? Do us a favor, drop your thoughts in the comments below.
What kind of policy do you purchase is important. Now, typically, 99% of homeowners are going to purchase what's called a homeowner policy. And of that, and that's a particular form that's designed in the state of Florida that's designed to really give you a pretty comprehensive policy coverage. Okay. Now, every company may have bits and pieces they add or subtract, but they would let you know in the policy forms. They would give you endorsements saying, hey, we do this, we don't do that. But by and large, they follow suit when it comes to this H03 policy form, which is probably what 95 or 98% of homeowners have, is an H03 policy form. So that's the first thing. You definitely want to make sure you do that and you don't get sucked into a less expensive like rental property policy called a dwelling fire. There's a time and place for that. If you have a very unique property that doesn't fit any other market, then you might have to go there. Then the next thing is, again, make sure your home is insured to the right value. There are homes out there that are underinsured, and technically the rule is if that home is more than 20% below the true replacement cost, it could impact how much they pay out in loss. It could significantly impact that. So you want to make sure that's good. There's some other coverages like replacement cost of contents, right? When you have a fire, you have a water loss, they have to replace your furnishings, your couches, your TVs. You can either insure those at full replacement, so you would get new items for the old in your home, or you could get cash value, which is depreciation. Now you're left with a subjective value that the company is going to give you, and you don't have a whole lot of say. So, a 5-year-old couch that's worth $5,000 may only get you $1,500, and too bad, you got to deal with that. So that is something I think is not necessarily super important. You just need to know what you have on your policy.
Okay. And earlier I heard you talk about, Debbie, the storm that just went through, and I know that you're probably getting inundated with calls, but what steps should a homeowner take to start filing a claim if something happened to their home? What do they need to be able to do? What's the steps they need to take?
Yeah, and over the years that has kind of morphed a little bit, because what was happening, in previous storms and over the last few years, you think of all the I storms, Irma, Ian, there were lots of contractors out there, some great, some wonderful contractors, but some not so great, and a lot of door knockers, right? Hey, we can help you file your claim. Well, it sounds great. Oh man, hands off. I don't have to do anything. These guys do everything. But most of the door knockers that come to your door are very self-centered. They're all about them, not about you. And so you have to be really careful. So what I would suggest, if you do have a loss, first of all, call your agent. If you have an agent, call the agent, say, here's what my situation is. And what we can do is we can look at it from the company side and from your side. Let's look at your policy. What's your deductible? Is your damage a $500 little roof leak that you can fix? Well, maybe you shouldn't make a claim because you have a $2,500 deductible, right? So let's look at the policy and what it's going to give you. Second of all, what does that claim, how does it affect your future insurability, right? Thankfully, acts of God like windstorm and things like that are typically not held against you in insurance. Now, what is held against you would be a pipe burst, like water. Water claims are the worst that you could probably file, but you may have to, right? If you wake up in an inch of water because your water heater busted, you need to make a claim. But call your agent, talk about it, see what the options are. As far as contacting a contractor or a water remediation company, as an agent, I'm going to tell you, call the insurance company first. And the reason is because those remediation companies can be great and work with companies, but sometimes they can overdo it. And now you've got a fight on your hand because they may put 30 fans in your house when 3 would be enough. And they charge for 30. Right. Now the insurance company goes, wait a minute, that wasn't necessary. Now you've got this back and forth. If you call the insurance company right away, typically they'll send their crew out, and they are legitimate people. They're not just, their people, but they're also, yes, they're going to save some money on the claim, which ultimately leads to our dollars being, better spent. But you let the insurance company in on the very beginning. I believe it's the most helpful way to go. So contact your agent, contact your insurance company. Don't just go out on your own unless you absolutely have to mitigate it, put a roof tarp on because water's just pouring in. Use logic on that.
Right on. So is it better for homeowners to use an independent claims adjuster or the one that's provided by the insurance company? Maybe you could speak into what the pros and the cons of each would be.
Understood. Okay, yeah. So regardless of how you approach your claim, you will have an adjuster from your insurance company, right? An adjuster is assigned to your insurance company, whether you do it directly or through an intermediary like an attorney or a independent adjuster. There are pros and cons. They really are. I think the issue becomes, do you trust that the insurance company is working for your good? And that's hard. I'm a practical guy. We know the rules. Insurance companies do look at the bottom line, but I can tell you, after 29 years in the business, most insurance companies want to cover the claim well. They like the review. They want to get positive feedback. And so, yes, they get a little bit of gun shy when there are attorneys filing $100,000 suits for a $15,000 roof claim. So they get a little protective of that. But to answer your question, I would say, by and large, dealing directly with the insurance company is going to be your best bet. When you deal with it, if you find that you then cannot come to an agreement, They deny a claim for a certain reason, you don't agree with that, perfectly okay. Then your next step might be to hire an independent adjuster to come alongside you and say, okay, how do we handle this? How do we come back to them? And I've seen that work. So I would say typically go to the company first, and then if that doesn't get worked out right, then you have other options.
Now, with this recent storm, do you anticipate, with all the damage that's been done, especially out east, Fruitville Road, east of 75, a lot of people probably didn't have flood coverage because they were in a no flood zone, and there was a lot of flooding. Are you anticipating rates going up? How does a storm affect insurance rates?
Yeah, it certainly does naturally because of the payout of insurance companies to cover those losses. Now, in this case, you're right. From our church, there's a couple that we've been assisting that lives, east of the interstate, no flood insurance because they were in X flood zone, right? The X typically means we don't need it. The mortgage company doesn't ask for it. The insurance companies don't care. Well, there's no coverage. So in that sense, the insurance companies aren't out any dollars, right? They're not covering that loss. So I don't know. Honestly, I'm not sure how that would affect the premium. But likely whenever the insurance companies do pay out, then yes, they recover those losses. And so, yeah, if there's multiple of those events, you can expect your rates to go up as they cover those losses. Yeah,
good.
For sure.
Is there any coverage that new homeowners might overlook or assume is included, but isn't, like what you were just speaking of, as far as like water damage or even sinkholes?
One off the top of my head might be your pool cage. Different insurance companies rate for that differently. Some included in the coverage. Some have a line item on your policy declaration page. It'll say, limited windstorm damage for screen enclosure. And there's a number, 10,000, 15, 20. So that you want to make sure that your insurance company has that coverage. If you want it, you may say, I don't want to spend the hundreds of dollars that it might cost, so I'll just go without it, but just ask them about it. The other one is the replacement cost of your contents. Okay, you kind of assume that's there because the house has replacement cost coverage, right? The insurance company's on the hook, but that's not necessarily the case on homeowners. So that's typically a line item on your quote and or your policy, how far you go. It will say replacement cost, personal property. That's coverage C on your policy. So you can check on that. Again, you may not need it or desire it, but if you think you have it, you better make sure you've got it. Sinkhole, you bring up a good point. In Florida, a number of years ago, they more or less replaced sinkhole coverage with a big term called catastrophic ground cover collapse. Okay, big mouthful, but that's what it's called. Because sinkhole by definition is way too vague. And so if you go way back years ago, the billboards on the interstate would say, do you think you have any cracks in your house foundation? Call us today, 1-800, do we cheat them and how? And they would file insurance claims that were not really anything other than just a hairline crack from some basic settling. But so the insurance companies were paying out dramatic costs for concrete pumping under homes and attorney fees. So they just kind of bypassed the sinkhole name and changed it to catastrophic ground cover collapse. That's mandatory on every policy. So you'll have that. So even if it says sinkhole coverage, no, talk to the agent. More than likely you have it. It's just not in that term. It's called catastrophic ground cover collapse.
If there's any renters that are watching this video, we've covered a lot about homeowners, but renters still need coverage as well. What do you recommend for them?
Yeah, so renters insurance, whether a home, an apartment, a condo, whatever, it is, first of all, very inexpensive. For $150, $200 a year, you can have protection both for your contents, everything you bring out of your U-Haul into your home, and liability. You might still be liable. If somebody gets hurt on that property, yeah, they may sue the property owner, but they could come back to you as well. And again, for little as like $10, $15 a month, you can have peace of mind. Now, for this flood situation, this came up with this same couple. Unfortunately, they purchased renter's insurance, but not flood insurance. As a renter, it is still your obligation or your necessity to purchase a separate flood insurance policy because homeowners does not cover flood. No rising body of water. A pipe burst, yes, in the home, that's water damage. But if it's a rising body of water, could be your street, your pond next door, your pool behind you, anything that causes water in the home, that's called flood. And that is a separate policy or might be endorsed onto a homeowner's if they offer it. Some companies do that. But yeah, as a renter, buying renter's insurance is usually plenty. And I would have said that before the storm, hey, you're fine. I wouldn't have thought about this particular couple even advising them to get flood insurance. Who'd have known? And yet, again, it's pretty inexpensive, but it might really bring you peace of mind.
I'm confident that our viewers are going to take a lot away from this.
And Martin, thank you so much for joining us today. How do people get a hold of you?
Well, the easiest thing is to probably go to the website. It's www.greatflorida.com. Greatflorida.com is spelled out. And my office particularly is in Ellington. And so if you look it up by your zip code, you'll find your local agent. Great Florida is a franchise. Lots of agents in Florida all ready to stand by and help you. So.
Okay. All right. And to our viewers, like if you guys have any more questions about insurance, please feel free to drop them in the comments below, and we'll try to get them answered as quickly as possible. But thank you so much for joining us today.
And guys, don't forget to like and subscribe to the Sun and Sand Report. Hit the bell icon so you guys can stay up to date with the latest videos. And thanks again for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.